I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and we're hearing complaints from opposition parties that Special Rapporteur David Johnston is unable to be independent because he reports to the Prime Minister. And that's somewhat civically illiterate if we look at the structures of how things are organized in our system of government. Now, this position is not an officer of Parliament, and if we were to try and make it such, that would likely require a legislative change to insert it into the Parliament of Canada Act. The other thing to remember is that security and intelligence functions are necessarily functions of the executive, meaning the Prime Minister and Cabinet. That includes things like classification and how information is handled, which is a lot of what the inquiry that Mr. Johnston is looking into deals with, is the flow of this information and how government accesses it and takes it up. And he's been pretty scathing on that so far. And in order to believe that this is some kind of a whitewash, one would have to not actually read what was in the report. The other thing to remember is that if we were to call a public inquiry, that is also an executive function. The Inquiries Act specifically states that it is up to the Governor and Council, meaning it is the Prime Minister and Cabinet advising the Governor General to call the inquiry, to name the judge or person who is heading this, and to also set the terms of reference. So that's all coming from the executive, which would, by the same logic, somehow mean that it's also not independent. But that's not how that works either. Now, we also have to remember that Johnston isn't just saying, trust me, on his report. He's inviting both the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, aka NSICOP, and the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency, NSIRA, to read his report and see if they agree with his conclusions. And he's also invited leaders of the opposition to do so. And they have the ability to get sworn into Privy Council so that they can see the documents and draw their own conclusions. They could publicly say whether they agreed or disagreed with his conclusions. They couldn't speak to individual aspects of what was in the report, but they have the ability to say, yes, I agree with his conclusions, and no, I do not agree with his conclusions. That's not up for debate. So this isn't just structured as some kind of a whitewash or to hide what the government knew or didn't know. It's all in there. They have the ability to see it. And just because he reports to the Prime Minister does not mean that that is effectively being compromised in any particular way. The other thing to remember is that if they really don't think that this report is credible and that the Prime Minister has somehow manipulated this process, they do have the option to declare non-confidence. They're not going to do it because this is just theater, and they could instead be acting like grown-ups and read the security cleared version of the report and see the classified information for themselves. But they don't want to do that because they just want to make hay and be partisan play actors. And that is hurting democracy more than appointing Mr. Johnston ever could. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.